Every marketer says the same thing. We just need to tell better stories. But here's the truth. Storytelling isn't about being poetic. It's not about a quirky about page or a slick tagline. It's about emotion, structure, and strategy. And when it's done right, it builds something more important than attention, and that's loyalty. So today, we're going to talk about how to create brand stories that not only stick in your audience's mind, but also in their heart. So why do stories work? Well, in short, they are psychological and emotional anchors. And as humans, we're hardwired for stories. And as far back as the beginning of any form of communication, stories have helped us to make sense of the world and pass on important information to our peers. They create emotional context, they tap into our memories, and they give information meaning. From a brand perspective, stories work because they simplify complexity, humanize your message, and make your brand feel like something, not just say something. When your brand is structured around a story, your audience don't just understand what you do, they understand and feel why it matters. That's how trust is built, and then that is how loyalty is earned. Let's look at a few brands that do this brilliantly. So number one, Patagonia. Their brand story isn't about clothing, it's about protecting the planet. Every product, every post, every campaign ties back to this story of environmental activism. And for Patagonia, this story isn't just told, it's lived through everything they do in every context and through every interaction. Number two, Nike. At its core, Nike's story is all about human potential. The hero isn't their brand, it's you. Their campaigns tap into perseverance, struggle, and triumph. Essentially, it's archetypal storytelling reimagined for modern day culture. Number three, Hiut Denim, a small Welsh denim brand whose story is centered about reinvigorating a town's craftsmanship. Their story isn't global, it's local, it's intimate, and it's deeply personal. We can relate to it, we root for that brand, we want it to do well. So what do these brands have in common? They don't just have content, they have a narrative that flows through everything they do. Now I want to break down some key brand story elements that you can use when crafting your own brand story. We're going to start by looking at these 4 key story pillars. Number one, the origin. So where did your brand come from? What problem did you set out to solve? What gap did you see? What ignited your desire, your drive, your ambition to go on this journey? And if you're working in a larger company on behalf of a brand, what was the genesis of that brand? What was the history of it? Where did it come from? How does it exist? And what is it trying to achieve? Origin stories don't need to be dramatic. They need to be true and emotionally resonant. A lot of times when we work with clients, it's about uncovering that story, understanding that journey, working out what the purpose behind the initial business owners and founders was in order to bring that forward and bring it into this way that we're moving the brand forward for our clients. How we're going to reposition, we might need to dive into some of that. And a lot of times it's about connecting, bridging between where the brand has come from and where it is going. And sometimes that origin story can be a good place to start to uncover some of the things that over time a company loses. As it gets bigger, as it scales quickly, as it grows, it starts to lose who it is. It loses its culture, it loses its values, it loses its vision, its mission. The purpose gets clouded over lots and lots and lots of reimaginings of what it should be. But don't ever take for granted that origin story or that journey the company has gone on. Because a lot of times in that genesis, in that moment, there is a lot of gold that can be uncovered to develop your brand further and also to reconnect and reinvigorate the culture of your company. Number two, the mission. What bigger impact do you want to see in the world? How can you achieve this goal? And also, why do you exist beyond making a profit? So these 3 questions correlate to 3 key core principles or core foundations of your brand, which are your brand purpose, your brand vision, and your brand mission. So your purpose is the reason for being beyond making a profit. Why do you do what you do? What is that spark? What was that reason for being? And sometimes that comes from the origin, as we've just said. The next thing to think about is, what's your big lofty goal? Where do you see the future of the company going? What impact do you want to have? What's the change you want to be in the world? And it has to be something you can visualize. A vision is nothing if you can't see it. So when John F. Kennedy said, "I will put a man on the moon," he was telling everybody and giving everybody a clear picture that they could see of something that they were all heading towards when it came to the space race. Not only that, it was deeply motivational and inspiring. And your vision should be all of these things. And then you have the how. So if your vision is the end result, where you want to get to, what you want to achieve, your mission is what do you need to do on a day-to-day basis in order to achieve that vision. So for Patagonia, if their vision is environmental sustainability for all, their mission needs to be what do they do on a day-to-day basis in order to reach that vision. And their mission is something along the lines of build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, do the best you can for the world, our community and the planet. I may have got that slightly wrong, but it's something like that. And essentially that mission, if they do that on a day-to-day basis, they will eventually reach their goal and their ultimate vision. So when we talk about mission from a story context, we're talking about those three things: purpose, vision, and mission rolled into one. And as part of a story idea, the mission is kind of what drives you. It's the thing that is carrying the arc of your brand story journey. Your mission creates meaning, and those three things wrapped together, your purpose, vision, and mission, that becomes the meaning of the story that we're going on with our brand. Number 3, the arc. How has your brand evolved? What lessons have you learned along the way? And what challenges have you faced? Audiences connect with evolution. When they see your growth, they can relate to it. They can feel it. Transformation is something that's intrinsic to human nature. It's something we all go through every day of our lives, on big scale and on small scales. Everything we do is generally transformative in some way. From driving lessons to going to college, whatever it is, it's a transformative journey. People relate to that. So if you can communicate how your brand has evolved, what lessons you've learned, what challenges you've overcome, what things you've had to struggle with, how you've changed as a business, why you've changed as a business, these things that talk about journeys and transformation, people find that highly relatable, especially if you can communicate it in context when it comes to how that has improved your product, how that's improved your service, how that means that you are putting the customer first in all that you do. Audiences don't want a perfect brand. They want a brand they can relate to, they can root for, and that they can be part of that journey, or they can feel connected to it, or they have shared values with it. So if you can open up, if you can talk about the things that makes you imperfect, you've got a really good chance of connecting with that audience on a deeper level and building a community that lives around your brand and really roots for it. Number 4, the role of your customer. Most importantly of all, what role does your customer play in this story? Now, a lot of times when we talk about marketing and we talk about brand from a storytelling perspective, we're talking about externally in as much as reaching your target audience, helping them to understand what your brand stands for. And it's all about that engagement with your customer, as opposed to your story of origin, of genesis, or of evolution. We're talking more about this kind of story, and this is the most important kind of story, but the other parts that we talked about actually play into it if done right. So most people talk about on their about page about all the things they do and the accolades they have, and those are great, but if you can flip that to being, why does that matter to the customer? Why is it important that you've won this many awards? What does it mean that you've worked with 10,000 companies? What does it mean that you've grown exponentially over the last 3 years? A lot of the time, companies will put those things out thinking that they're the things that are going to drive sales. And a lot of times, all those things do are handle certain objections that the customer has later on. But you have to, first of all, get the customer to a point where they even want to engage with metrics like that, or facts like that, or stats, or checking awards, or certifications. They're not going to be interested in your certifications and your awards if they haven't actually been sold on your brand in the first place. And the job of storytelling at this point is to help your customer understand the role they play in this wider brand story and how your brand is at the center of it, and it's going to help them to transform. That's the key thing that you need to do with your marketing, with your content, and with your brand. If you can find out where your customer wants to be in terms of who they want to be, what they're trying to solve, and the things that are holding them back, if you can position your brand as the vehicle that is going to take them from A to B, then they feel part of a story with you, and one that also continues past that initial transaction. So don't forget that as well. A lot of people think about the storytelling side or the narrative to the point of sale, and it needs to go past that. You need to think about what role does your customer play as a repeat customer, and what role do they play in your business's journey as part of that transformation. So now you've got these story points and you've started to consider them. How do you actually embed them across all touch points? Well, a great brand story doesn't just live in one place, it should be echoed and embedded everywhere. And here's where most brands get it wrong. They manage to map out what the story looks like from origin to mission to then the arc, the transformation onto the customer and their role in the journey. They can map that all out as one cohesive narrative, but then they don't break it down. They don't use it in separate places. They have it as one massive narrative, which 9 times out of 10, you're not gonna be able to communicate all of it in one go. But the best brands, they communicate story in very few words, or they communicate story in a video or an animation, or in one experience the customer has. And the ability to do that is the thing that separates great brands from brands that never quite land. So once you have your story, you have to work out, how can we take parts of this and get that across in one piece of content? How can we communicate this part of the story in video, a short reel or a TikTok or a YouTube short? How can we get this across in an animation? How can we do it in a Google ad? How can we do it in a newsletter? How can our salespeople communicate one aspect of our story that we're going to pick up with an email newsletter later, or with a brochure, or with a leaflet, or with the next experience? All of these things, these touch points, are building a bigger narrative. It's almost like breadcrumbs. Every piece of content, every touch point, every interaction is like a breadcrumb to the wider story. And if you imagine your customer is almost reading chapters of your book every time they interact with you, what part of the story are you going to give them next? Tesla does a great job of this, being able to communicate whatever you think of the brand Tesla and Elon Musk, the way that they communicate what their mission is and what their goal is with regards to how their product works and how the audience fits into that journey. They do it really well. You could probably guess what their mission statement is without them having to even say it, and you wouldn't even know it, and you could probably have a really good guess and be really close. And that's just due to the fact that they managed to get across that story that is rooted in their origin and their mission and the transformation they're trying to create and the role that you play in that story so well, they can do it in a 20-second ad, and you still feel it's part of that wider narrative. And that's the ultimate goal. And every touch point is an opportunity to build upon that story and to connect with your customers in a slightly different way, whether it's packaging, website, in person, retail store, whatever it is. And when that happens, your brand becomes unforgettable, not because it shouts louder, but because it feels real and there's meaning tied to it. So if you want to build more than just a following, if you want to build a community of loyal advocates, people that will talk about your brand, pass it on, that will refer it at any chance they get, even if they're not asked, build a story that you are part of and that they are part of together. Give them a shared vision of where your company is headed and why they are important to it. Help them understand why you exist beyond making a profit. Help them understand the imperfections of your brand and give them a role in this story. Because when your story is clear, consistent, and customer driven, everything else becomes easier. Marketing lands deeper. Loyalty, sales, and conversions increase, and sales become conversations, not hard sells, as your customers are already sold on your brand before they even reach out. The most powerful brands aren't always the loudest, they're the most meaningful and unforgettable. And if you tell a great story, you'll never be forgotten. Now that you understand about brand story, if you'd like to find out where your brand is strong, where it's weak, and where you can improve, we actually have a 4-minute brand power assessment that takes you through a number of questions across 5 key areas of your brand, and it'll give you a customized report at the end with a score, a percentage out of 100, so you can see where you need to focus on next in order to help you grow your brand. If you're interested in that, there is a link in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification below this video so that you're notified every time a new video drops. Videos come out weekly and they're designed to help you unlock your brand's potential so you can stand out from the competition and create more impact. Have a great week, catch up soon, and keep those brands unified.